excited to be here with our CTO of Maestro, Varderes. Varderes, how you doing?
Good. What's up? How you doing? Thanks for putting
What's
this
up? What's
together.
up? Yeah, no, happy to. So we'll just jump in. I'm
Let's do
gonna
it.
start with like a hard hitting question. What's an existential threat to Bitcoin?
Ooh. I mean, however you answer this question, you're going to rub someone or some subset of the ecosystem the wrong way, which is that's why it makes it such a good question. The one of the biggest existential threats to Bitcoin is miner centralization, and that's a very long conversation. But if you get to a point where and it's like some version of the 51% attack. It's not necessarily exactly 51% attack, but some version of controlling the network in the form of mining power, whether that be through regulatory capture or some other kind of financial incentive to capture the network. It is the biggest threat because if you have majority control over the network in terms of hash rate, you can fork the network and just essentially take it over. And if you however much you value decentralization, it is one of the core reasons why Bitcoin is so valuable is that it's been very difficult to control it. So that's one of the major threats, I would say, of the whole network, tech stack, whatever it is.
So maybe set the stage a little bit. What's actually happening? What are you seeing with the hash rate, and why do you think this is a pressing issue right now?
Well, I don't don't take my word for it. You go onto mempool space or any kind of like dashboard that shows the distribution of Bitcoin blocks across mining pools, and you'll see that the top five mining pools mine roughly 80% of the blocks, something like that. Um, I don't remember the exact number, but it's higher than 50%. And it's, and a good chunk of those mining pools are based in the United States, and they KYC the miners that are committing their hash rate to the mining pools, right? So you obviously have issues to anonymity there if that's valuable to you, and you have this. If you're KYCing, that means you're identifying the the individuals and the companies that are committing their hash rates to these very centralized mining pools. And all you really need is like sweeping regulation, in the United States that either bans Bitcoin or does some kind of other type of capture where it could very negatively impact everyone that holds Bitcoin or wants to build on Bitcoin or interact with it. So, you could just see it in the numbers. It's very clear.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you is that there's not only a centralization risk among the mining pools, but there's also a government centralization risk. So if all of the miners are concentrated in one country, there's a risk that the government could step in. Um, and yeah, like what do you see as the risk there? Give me the doomsday scenario for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it could be used. So if you look at the current administration, and that's kind of what was one of their strategies, is become the dominant Bitcoin powerhouse of the world as as United States, and if we capture as much of the Bitcoin as possible, either in the form of the actual BTC, but also in the form of mining power, and if Bitcoin does indeed realize its vision of becoming this global peer-to-peer payment platform, financial platform, then you'll see the same kind of thing happening with the US dollar now, where the US government uses the US dollar to turn the knobs on things and exert their power over the world, kind of like this economic dominance strategy. And my belief is that the current administration is seeing that possibility with Bitcoin. So if it is indeed as valuable, if it will continue to become more valuable, and the U.S. is the dominant kind of force in that, then they can use it as economic dominance across the world. Um, some might say that's not really a threat. That's actually a good thing, right? Kind of in this like pro American approach, but it does heavily go. It does very aggressively go against one of the core vision of Bitcoin, right? And from the perspective of Satoshi Nakamoto or kind of a lot of the current participants of Bitcoin, in that it's a global peer-to-peer payment system that is not gated by any particular country or organization or entity. And just because it's not, captured by a bank and facilitated by a bank, it could still be captured and, controlled by a country. So that's kind of, from that perspective, it's a threat.
Mhm. Yeah, isn't it
Wow,
interesting that
this is
uh,
getting really dark real quick. I like it though. This is good stuff.
no, we gotta start with the hard hitting questions. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that the United States government just had a complete 180 with the administration switch, and we're like, all right, we are all in on Bitcoin. We're gonna have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're gonna be buying Bitcoin. Our president's launching meme tokens. Like it's
That's a whole
it's
nother.
such a wild switch. Yeah, I wonder if Satoshi could have ever thought like he would see this happening. Like the United States with the reserve currency is just being like, you know what, Bitcoin, we're this is legitimate. This is a legitimate financial um, method. Um,
Well, some people believe Satoshi was the U.S. government, you know. So
whoa,
it's possible that their vision is being fully realized, if you believe that conspiracy. Uh,
interesting.
yeah, I don't think Satoshi, in the way that we kind of the general consensus of who that person was and what their vision was. I don't think that person envisioned, this type of outcome, right?
Mm,
I think in so many ways it goes against this idea of a government, right, that has complete control in our case, in the form of the Fed over our
mhm,
monetary supply and how interest rates are determined, and um, the fact that Bitcoin is now playing a key role for the government in so many different ways, and that the government wants to use it to their advantage, and essentially take control over it to some extent, is, I don't think Satoshi really envisioned that. Um, it's a very interesting philosophical thing. There's no like clear answer to all this, in my opinion. There's no like, oh, it's right or wrong, or it should have been this way or that way. It's just, at the very least, super interesting, right? That
mhm.
this thing that was created in such a way where it's like completely at odds with centralized forces is now all the centralized forces are scrambling to figure out how to play a role in that. It's kind of like they see that they've lost trying to resist it. So either lose or join, kind of thing. So in that sense, it's a very beautiful outcome. But there's still that threat of, once they do join it and capture it, what's going to happen? Very, very difficult to say.
Yeah. So, man, I have so many thoughts here, but
I
one thing I know there's a million things. One thing I do want to ask you though is, what do you think about like the ETFs and MicroStrategy of the world just getting a higher and higher concentration of the total supply of Bitcoin? So, like for example, MicroStrategy now has about 3% of the total supply of Bitcoin. These treasury companies are all adding it to their balance sheet. They're adding more and more. Um, I mean, they're obviously doing it because they see it as like a great way for like price appreciation, and they're getting into one of the most valuable asset classes in the world. But what does that actually do for Bitcoin? Like how does this play out in 10, 20 years? If there continues to be this like accumulation from some of these major financial players.
It's very difficult to predict, or it's very difficult to convince me that any technology or any kind of innovation is going to be fully distributed and decentralized given global adoption. I think
Mm.
that it's very reasonable to assume that there will be very impactful, influential central forces in so many respects. That is how the laws of nature work. And Bitcoin in this case, I think, is no different. So when the United States was founded, you had the founding fathers. They wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson obviously played a key role in all of this. One of the things he said that people don't talk about, I think, is super wise, is you can't expect people that are running the democracy, in Congress to act in the kindness of their hearts. They are also self-interested. People involved in government are self-interested. They have their own incentives, their own wins that they're trying to get. And the key fundamental thing here is that you have sufficient number of competing interests. And I think that's why for such a long time the United States worked, is that yes, you had a lot of influence, you have a lot of sources of power, you had enough people that were completely at odds with each other, organizations that are at odds with each other, where the thing kind of more or less balanced out, right? And for something like Bitcoin, I think as long as you have a sufficiently large number of competing interests, whether they be very centralized or not, so that there's no single entity that captures the whole thing, I think is a critical piece for Bitcoin's success. So to answer your question, it's I think it's fine if MicroStrategy has 3% of the supply, but there should be some other treasury company in Europe or in Africa or wherever that also has 3% of the supply. There should be a government. There are multiple different governments that don't like each other that each have 1%, right? So
Mhm.
let's just give a random number, like 100 different entities that have 90%. If those 100 entities really don't like each other and they have like conflicting ideologies of like how the world should be, I think that would be great for Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I it totally makes sense. No, I agree. I find it to be fascinating. One of the cool things that I like about Bitcoin is that I almost, and mind you, I'm not a biologist by any understanding. I'm just a enthusiast from the outside. But I feel like to a degree it follows this almost evolutionary survival of the fittest pattern, right? So it's like when you have threats from one end, then it evolves and something else grows from it. So it's like this organic system that's always like doing like a push and pull. Um, is I don't know. I find it fascinating. It's like the Satoshi somehow designed this thing for the Earth to come together, and we're going to build an organic system in code that's constantly updating and evolving. Um,
Well, that's actually a very important point about constantly updating and evolving, and I have some strong opinions about that as well. Um,
all
but
right,
no,
talk to
it's
me.
really
Tell me these opinions.
I actually, real quick on these treasury companies that are forming, right? Like, they figured out a way, obviously led by MicroStrategy. Actually, Tesla was like early in on this game, if you think about it.
Yeah, right.
Like, people are not realizing how insightful they were. Like, their CTO at the time, I forget, but just kind of Elon's like love of the future and like really cool tech, like to get a sign off to buy billions in Bitcoin so early on before MicroStrategy people took the reins essentially. I
Hmm.
think that's like super cool of Tesla, and they're still holding on to it as far as I can tell. But I think like you're gonna see throughout the cycles, throughout the years, more creative and clever and interesting ways that organizations are gonna try to buy and hold on to Bitcoin and use Bitcoin, right? Like right now, this current cycle, treasury companies just kind of given how our financial systems work and how they're regulated, the optimal strategy turns out was a treasury company, right?
Hmm.
I wonder what like the next iteration of that will be. Like, what will be the next type of thing that figures out? It's just again going back to my earlier point. It's like everyone and their grandmothers are trying to figure out how to hold Bitcoin. They're like trying to figure out like how to gain exposure to this thing, how to participate in this thing, and so much of our global economy is like starting to revolve around that. In addition to, of course, things like mining, where their energy is involved and data infrastructure is involved. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to highlight that I think there's going to be these like evolutions of types of organizations that figure out how to gain efficient exposure to Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Um,
What do you think about Bitcoin updating and evolving?
oh man, that's like 10 podcasts, bro. Um, yeah, there's some deep, always a lot of like debates there, a lot of discussions, and amongst the developer community. And these guys have been at it for over a decade at this point. So I'm not trying to it's very difficult to describe exactly how they're all thinking about it. They're super insightful about both sides of this debate. So you have two camps. You have the camp that basically the people right now that are maintaining Bitcoin Core. So that's the GitHub repo, the C++ repo, where the actual like core node is being implemented and what the
Hmm.
vast majority of the network runs. And now, for example, Jack Dorsey, built this company called Spiral. I believe it's a nonprofit or it's something similar, but a lot through Spiral, Jack Dorsey funds a lot of Bitcoin development, and has like essentially a team of devs. I think mostly based in New York that are just like just maintaining Bitcoin Core, right? They're resolving issues, they're building new features, enhancing the
Hmm.
security, releasing new versions, um, and so the people that want ubiquitous adoption of Bitcoin and want DeFi on Bitcoin, want sophisticated financial products to be leveraging Bitcoin. The people that are building L2s, BitVM based or otherwise, all these people, and the VCs that are investing, in this space that want to see these things be built out, they all want Bitcoin to keep evolving and changing, right? So there's like some
Hmm.
very serious limitations on L1 right now, base chain, that are making it extremely difficult to do things like ZK rollups in an efficient way, right? Or
Hmm.
to have sophisticated smart contract functionality that will enable, some kind of realistic, scalable financial product on top of Bitcoin. And um, so I think that kind of side of it was winning and will ultimately win, because it's just undeniable. You have to do these things. And also, by the way, that camp also includes the hunter beasts of the ecosystem, the Bit360 people that want to make the damn thing quantum resistant, because that is one
Hmm.
of the biggest threats next to centralization, probably up there with centralization, is the fact that quantum computers will be able to drain addresses. And yeah, those people all want to evolve Bitcoin and change it, make it better, make it more secure, add more features, in a slow way, but in a way that is reasonable. And then you have the other camp where they've built some momentum online. They have like the Knots node, and they have their Bidax mining, Ocean Pool. Those guys, you know, they don't want Bitcoin to change. They want to limit spam on the network. They want to filter things that are not directly involved in direct peer-to-peer payments. Um, Funny enough, a lot of those people also don't care too much about BIP360 and quantum resistance, which is super scary, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
ossification makes sense to an extent, where if you don't change the thing and it doesn't evolve, the whole network will fall apart, right? So as you can tell by how I answered that, very much on the side of we need to invest time and resources into R&D, into better testing, into evolving Bitcoin, and just making it more powerful and more scalable. If we really want it to be this global financial settlement layer, um,
Yep.
there's no other way it can happen right now.
Yep. No, fully agree with that. It does need to be robust, and it does need to be updated. And I guess let's tie that into to to mining a little bit more. So miner fees drop over time, right? With Bitcoin and the halvening, every um, man, this is terrible. It's 4 years, right,
Yeah.
for each happening.
Yeah, roughly 4 years. It's not exactly four
Okay.
years. It coincidentally turns out every roughly 4 years because of like difficulty and like the adoption curve and hash rate and how that kind of and the price of Bitcoin, it's all kind of interconnected. But yeah, it's roughly
Hmm.
every 4 years you have every block reward is halved until you reach the maximum number of Bitcoin that can be issued from the network. And
Yep.
then after that, it's just mining. It's just transaction fees that miners can make, not no longer like newly mined Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right now, it's
So
at
so
125 Bitcoin per block
so
that has been earned. Yeah.
yeah. So that being the reality, there comes a point where it's like if Bitcoin isn't at a certain price, then it's not worth the energy for the miners to be able to mine the Bitcoin to get the rewards. So yeah, let's just say if Bitcoin's price remains stable and through like right now, it just like whatever for whatever reason just flatlined at 100K, and then 4 cycles later, it just wouldn't make sense to be mining Bitcoin. The energy cost would be too high for the amount of reward that you get. But there's the fees, right? There's the fees within blocks. So what do you think is necessary for these block fees to increase? I feel like if there's more fees for Bitcoin mining and there's more rewards for miners, it's actually better for Bitcoin in the long term. But there's been
100%.
some
And that
resistance. Yeah.
that's 100% true regardless of Bitcoin's price going up or down. You need to a lot of like the OG Bitcoin devs like Jameson Lopp and those guys all talk about this way, very extensively. But transaction volume, transaction block space demand, in other words, right, is extremely important for sustainability of the network. Not
Hmm.
This is like regardless of all the Bitcoins being mined, the price of Bitcoin. If you don't have anyone using your network and and as a result, you don't generate transaction fees, um, you essentially cannot sustain a mining business, right? And therefore, you cannot secure the network. So it's just
Yep.
like first principles. That's the understanding. That's like there's an inherent risk there where, yeah, it's extremely important that people want to use the Bitcoin network and they want to pay fees to get into a block, right? And you can
Hmm.
get into all kinds of debates about, yes, again, mining centralization, who gets to mine those blocks. The reality is you need those blocks to be filled as much as possible. And now now we've mined all the Bitcoin, we still need miners to secure the network. Then at that time, you especially need transaction volume and block space demand because the thing that's going to sustain those mining operations is sufficient fees coming from these transactions. And and at that point, if basic supply and demand, if you have everyone wanting to use this thing, Bitcoin's price will continue to go up. But for some reason, for whatever reason, Bitcoin's price doesn't go up and it stays flatline, as you suggested. If you have a
Hmm.
lot of transaction volume, there's still a crossover point where from the fees, miners are still profitable, right?
Mm.
So, or at least can sustain their operations. So, yeah, and kind of tying it back to your previous question about change and evolution and kind of innovation in the space, these are the types of projects that are pushing for block space demand. All the L2s and scaling layers on Bitcoin, all the Bitcoin Fi and DeFi projects that are trying to build actual usable financial products on Bitcoin, all the applications and UI, user facing stuff. And again, all the investors pouring money into this space, that kind of stuff, that ecosystem creation is the thing that's going to drive volume up. And that's why you need, back to the previous one, that's why you need this evolution and change so that it can service those needs. So
What do you think's going to
all
drive?
interconnected, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What do you think? What do you think will drive fees and protocol revenue for Bitcoin? I feel like the landscape for Bitcoin is different from the pump fund world of Solana. We're not necessarily going to see the same types of users. What do you think, especially from Maestro's perspective, and you get to sort of see like what people are building? What do you think is going to drive fees?
You either have a lot of smaller, you have a large throughput of small transactions from, let's say, on the more retail side, or you have a lot of low throughput but large transactions from institutional side of things, and it's not binary. Obviously we want a world where both of those things are happening, um, but effectively, any kind of usage in a meaningful way is going to drive transaction volume and therefore have fees on the network that miners can then use to operate.
Mm,
So I think in the shorter term, well, it's hard to say in any term. Retail adoption is extremely important. That's why Lightning was such a sought after technology, because the potential for Lightning was everyone can interact with Bitcoin in a seamless way without waiting for the 10-minute block time settlement. Um, and they can integrate Lightning into all kinds of payment systems, and it will be just kind of this QR code or just tapping system where retail is interacting with businesses, retail is interacting with other retail, and
mm.
all of that is generating transaction volume on the network, and therefore increasing the amount of fees that are being paid. Um, so that's one side of it, is some kind of actual payment, kind of peer-to-peer payment, large scale, scalable payment layer. I think Spark's a really interesting project where they're taking kind of learning from Lightning and its limitations and its shortcomings and building something that's a lot more comprehensive. So those types of projects are super important for the space. Um, and then you have a lot of these like application specific scaling layers where they can help bring specialized specific industries into Bitcoin. So I don't know, some kind of supply chain logistics sector of the economy now has this scaling layer that is catering to them, and so now you can have like bring entire sectors of the economy into Bitcoin. All of these are like very high value, high impact verticals for Bitcoin to then have higher transaction fees and therefore sustain itself.
What's why didn't Lightning work?
Oh
And
man.
talk to me about like the difference with Spark. I feel like Spark's the hot girl at the party right now. It's like everyone's like, "Ooh, what's going on here?" So I want to learn more about Spark and yeah, what's solving with Lightning.
Well, Lightning might still work, right? I don't know. It's People are using Lightning. I think it's like integrated into X now. You can like have Lightning tips and you can like donate with Lightning. So there are these very interesting successes of Lightning. It's just simply not where it just simply hasn't reached the potential that people that were involved wanted it to reach. Some of the most brilliant engineers and builders contributed to Lightning, build applications on top of it. I think just like the various, like the multiple market cycles made it kind of, it didn't really achieve that momentum to get like unstoppable adoption because of these cycles. So I
Mm,
think it's like a macro kind of effect as to why Lightning didn't see its potential.
hmm
It has limitations around settling on the base chain. So a lot of these like Lightning networks, like they have like their kind of their own network of peers for like, let's say a like a Lightning wallet application that is popular. Um, they kind of all their users are kind of in that, you could say, private Lightning network, and that network never really settles to Bitcoin because that settlement is expensive, and so who's going to
mm,
pay that fee to settle onto Bitcoin? So let's just keep this whole thing private. But obviously, the risk there is centralization, right? In that you're
hmm
relying on whoever is providing the nodes for this Lightning network for this application. If they shut down, or if they want to, close, shut down this application or this network, like there's a lot of risk there. So I think in that sense, people didn't really, use Lightning as it was intended as a state channel technology that rapidly settles onto Bitcoin base chain. Um, you had a lot of like lawsuits from regulators uh, that kind of went after some Lightning wallets and kind of negatively gave it like a negative image as well. I think that's maybe less impactful, but there are a lot of these different things. For Spark, oh yeah, Lightning also isn't as feature complete with respect to smart contract capabilities and building sophisticated logic for kind of fintech or things like that. Spark, that's where Spark, I think, really shined, is that they took what Lightning was trying to be and they added this Turing complete, fully capable smart contract layer. And in that sense, they solved that problem. I think Spark has this other issue of like, how do they get adoption, right? And I think the way they're trying to do that is by playing the stablecoin game, right? So they want to make sure like Spark is like the stablecoin scaling layer for
Mm.
Bitcoin, but also it does have, smart contract capabilities akin to Ethereum that now, and it's also interoperable with Lightning. So you can like transfer your sats between the networks and but also have the sophistication of something like Spark. So lots of potential there. It's not just hype, in my opinion. Very talented team and lots of cool tech there. A lot of everything open source as well. It's really cool.
Wow. Okay. Super cool. And so it's more dynamic. It's more programmable. They're
Exactly.
really trying to solve the stable coin
Yeah.
usage, which I
Specifically
think
stable coins
is
on Bitcoin.
critical.
That's a whole nother, yeah.
Yeah.
Conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's really interesting. I feel like we're gonna look back on like this period and just be like, oh my goodness, like we used to use other infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like there's something before these types of rails, and it'll just seem so obvious in hindsight. Um,
Yeah, but I think
I guess
stablecoin though are in general not just for Bitcoin, but for crypto as a industry, that is the product market fit. And you're seeing so we're always like one of the first things that the industry talked about when crypto was coming into the scene is like, man, these banking systems are using like super outdated COBOL like central mainframes that are like there's like five people left on the planet that know how to program these things, and they're all like at least 7 years old, and they're getting paid millions of dollars because they have to use
yeah.
this. It's crazy stuff, right? Like our entire financial system, our banking system is based on this stuff, and um, the thing that's finally gonna kind of break that curse, I guess, is stable coins, right? Because now there's like a much shorter path to go from these traditional systems to the crypto, the have significantly more innovative and scalable technology that is crypto and blockchain. That the thing that's going to bridge that gap, and it is bridging that gap, is stable coins. And that's another thing about like Bitcoin kind of circling back is the stablecoin problem on Bitcoin has to be solved, which people are solving like Tether as well.
Mhm.
That's going to be one of the biggest unlocks of Bitcoin, primarily for the reason I just mentioned. Sorry, I went off the rails there a little bit, but
No. It's good. I completely agree. I didn't realize that our legacy financial system had the what would you say, the Cobalt?
Cobalt is a old programming language. Yeah, yeah. There's like
Yeah,
I'm kind of
that's
exaggerating.
insane.
Not maybe 10, maybe like 100 people that could program Cobalt.
That's so wild. That's so wild. Uh, Also, have you ever read D Hawk's book? It's One from Many. It's D Hawk was like the founder of Visa.
I have not. What's give me the gist of it?
The gist of it is the founder of Visa and the founder of digital payments would have 100% been all about crypto and decentralization.
Oh,
Like
he,
this,
he passed away. He's not alive anymore.
I believe he passed away fairly recently. This guy was awesome. I could not recommend this book more. Uh, he he was an idealist, and to actually get a global payments rail to exist in general and get all these different banks to agree that okay, we're going to use this as a global standard, that was an insane feat at the time that we just completely, growing up with these financial services, we discredit and ignore. But it was not just a given that it would happen. this guy was just an idealist, and he said this is going to be like a better, more egalitarian system, and he went out and willed his way to make it happen. It's an awesome story, but at the same time, he didn't like the idea of centralized power, and I think he would have loved crypto rails. So it's funny to see that there is still just like
Their
100
vision
people in
is
the world
coming.
that are, yeah,
I mean, these brilliant people, their vision is like they saw the future and they weren't alive long enough to see it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
yeah,
I always
exactly.
found that fascinating with like our like the great scientists and engineers. Like Nikola Tesla is a very obvious example of that. Like so much of the stuff that he built was not like we didn't see the impact until well after he was dead. So many examples of that. There's so many examples of that in crypto. It was just crazy. You have all these like famous cryptographers that like put out a some kind of like research paper or like gave a talk as to why we need an internet money or we need some kind of secure way to transfer value. But this was like decades before Bitcoin came to the scene. You know what I mean? I always found that to
Yep.
be super fascinating. It sounds like he's one of these guys.
For sure is, for sure is. So I guess we're getting close to the end, so we'll wrap up here.
Sure.
I'll do some rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Favorite book that you've read in the last couple years?
Ooh, The Gambler by Rampol. The Rampol is the biographer. The Gambler's about Kirk Kerkorian, and Kirk Kerkorian essentially in the late '60s to all the way through to like the '90s, essentially built what's like modern day Las Vegas, and he was like the first legitimate businessman, kind of tycoon that wasn't a mobster associated with Vegas, and so many people tried to take him down. Like Howard Hughes tried to like spend so much of his time and energy,
Whoa.
yeah, trying to take this guy down. And he didn't even care. He didn't even play this game because he was like 10, 20 steps ahead of everyone. So he wasn't even like competing with these people and he wouldn't even like pay attention to them. There's so many things like that about this guy. I mean, at some point he owned like 80% of the Las Vegas Strip, and he kept breaking his own records with like the largest hotel and resort, in the world. And that's all really cool. There's so much more to say about him. By the way, I know these are rapid fire, but I love this book. So there's so much more to say about. The coolest thing about him was he was super private. No one knew who he was except his closest, the people that were working closest to him. And
Hmm.
he broke his own records, did all these things, and no one knew who he was until like he was dating a young tennis player when he was in his 70s, and she like divorced him or
Nice.
something, and that's what made him public. was was a girl.
Oh man, that's
Anyway,
funny.
really cool story. Totally recommend it.
All right, favorite AI coding tool?
Claude Claude Sonnet model is really cool. Um, yeah, coding tool. Yeah, any kind of like agent that's integrated into my coding environment that allows me to iterate on features and like test them. Yeah, Claude. Right now I use VS Code with Claude Sonnet 4 in agent mode, and it's awesome. Grok tasks are really awesome too. I have it like asking, doing like various things for me daily and like sending me like summarizations of certain things about the industry that I care about, and it like sends me an email and it's like actually really good. So Grok tasks are awesome. So any kind of like task type of stuff with these agents is really turning out to be useful for me.
Best personal productivity hack or thing that you've done and implemented? What's your best personal product like system that you've implemented that you love?
Man, those are happening left and right, all the time. The best one though, yeah, it's hard to say. It's probably the agent and the way what I just described right now, like agent developing code with an agent. But specifically in that context, the thing that gave me a huge unlock was knowing how to use the agent, really providing it with context and providing it with like guidelines and clearly defining requirements. and in addition to the thing that I want to build, the frameworks and tools that I'm going to use to build that thing, really understanding those things myself, learning it from scratch without an AI, and then taking my learnings and my understandings, combining it with um, clearly defined requirements and what I'm looking for is like exponential unlock with AI agents. So that was
Mm,
something I discovered recently, and I mean I've been on the go, kind of addicted. It's good.
love it. All right. Any last parting words you want to share before we jump off?
No, I love what we're doing at Maestro. It's really for me personally, it's such an adventure and has given me so much meaning. And it's so cool to have a team that is, on the same page, and we're doing great things together. Um, I really hope like Bitcoin realizes its full vision, because I think the world will be a much better place. So Maestro's here to make that happen, help make that happen, to in whichever way we can. Thanks, Davis. This is
Awesome.
great.
Amazing. Let's go. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, have a productive, good week, and yeah, let's bring Bitcoin to its fullest potential. So thanks, Bard.
Take care,
See
man.
everyone next time.